following is a presentation of the Belly Up Sports Media Network.
Shazam! Welcome, everyone, to another edition of No Credentials Required, where you don't need a press pass to talk sports. We're presented by Belly Up Sports in association with Godzilla Media. My name is Ryan McCarthy. I'm one of your hosts, and to my right is a man who withdrew from the home run derby because he thought it would be unfair to the other players that he was participating. We've got Dustin Henry. Dustin, how are you doing tonight?
I did. I had to withdraw because I've got what we call the knoblock swing. If anybody remembers, I have perfected it. I can knock the ball out of the park with that one, and it would just be totally unfair. Coupled with the physics that I once learned from a George Costanza, simple geometry to hit the ball out of the park. With these weapons, I'm unstoppable, so I had to withdraw here.
And also the all-wool uniforms.
Yeah, I do get excited for the home run derby, though. I'm not sure how you feel about it. I do. I'm just kind of like, ooh, the ball goes far. I like it. I like it. Now, and I'm gonna unpopular take. I'm coming out with it right out of the gate.
Ooh.
I like it better than the All-Star game. I like the home run derby better than the All-Star game. That's what I'd take of the All-Star break for baseball.
Yeah, I get it. I think people look more forward to the home run derby than anything else in any of the All-Star games. But in any case, we'll talk about that more another time. But for the meantime, just want to remind everyone about our social media channels, which are right here down below. Twitter, Instagram, and the scarcely used TikTok is at NoCredsREQ, Facebook.com/NoCredsREQ, YouTube.com/NoCredsREQ. And if you're watching right now on either Facebook or on YouTube, we want you to go ahead and hit that like button. Smash it responsibly. We're also trying to get to 500 subscribers now that YouTube has kind of changed everything with monetization. So we're trying to get to 500 subscribers and spread the word. Spread it far, spread it wide. We want to get to 500 subscribers, hopefully very, very soon. And that way we can get ourselves monetized and get ourselves get some money for this podcast. So it'll be really
cool.
nice. It'll be really nice. On the audio side, though, if you want to go ahead and go to subscribe to the podcast on a myriad of podcast platforms, including Apple, Spotify, Spreaker, Google Play, iHeart, TuneIn, wherever you podcast. Subscribe to the channel. Subscribe to our podcast. Also, rate and review. 5 stars is the preferred rating. Review the podcast. We might even read your review on the air, no matter how uplifting or disgusting it is. We will read it on the air. And also, since this is a live show on both YouTube and on Facebook, we want you to engage with the show. And I know it's been a couple weeks since we played the sound. I know, Dustin, you've been looking forward to it. I gotta play that sound.
Of course.
That's right, folks. Again, it's a listener. It's a watcher listener engagement heavy show. We want your comments, whether you're watching live or watching on replay. We want your comments. We want you to interact with the show. This is because that's what makes it so much fun.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it definitely adds a dynamic to the show. It's always fun to get on here with you, Ryan, and talk. But when the audience joins us, we love it.
Absolutely we do. So, Dustin, we took a week off from broadcasting, mostly because of me. I'll confess, I was supposed to watch Moneyball last weekend, didn't happen. Was supposed to watch it Monday, didn't happen. Didn't get till Tuesday. Sent a text message to Dustin saying, "Do you want to wait till next week?" I haven't watched Moneyball yet. He's very, unfortunately for Dustin, he's very flexible. But
Yes.
we're going to go through our summer movie review, which is called No Ticket Required. So I'll go ahead and play that delicious bumper. That's right, folks. It's No Ticket Required. Our summer movie review continues, and we both decided to sit down on an individual abodes
Mhm.
and watch Moneyball. Moneyball is based on the true story. A lot of these sports movies are based on true stories, or relatively based on true stories. This was about the 2002 Oakland A's, with Billy Beane, and how they kind of try to change the game of baseball with their philosophy of analytics and
Mhm.
seeing how that dynamic worked. Dustin, I want to get your first impressions about this movie. What was your? Neither of us had seen it before we came into this review, so this is a fresh review for the both of us. Dustin, what were your impressions of this movie?
Well, first to start out, I will say someone was in the chat on the last episode. I'm not sure if it was Snowman. I'm trying to remember who
It was
made
probably Chris Dietz from Fifth Down Sports.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember, and they said that Air may be the movie of the year, and then they said Moneyball. Moneyball was a terrible sports movie, and you said at that point, you said, they tried to say we shouldn't have to watch it, and then you said challenge accepted. That's when we cemented. We had our production meeting on air. We said we're watching Moneyball. And so I really tried to not let that paint my perception of the movie. Now, did I think Moneyball was a terrible movie? No, no. I mean, especially because I was able to watch it in the comfort of my own home on a streaming platform.
Yep.
No points for the new Max app, by the way. I thought it's a little clunky on PS5. And also the volume on streaming apps. Get it together. Your audio compression, like you're so much softer than TV. But that's another topic for, I don't know, because I don't have another show.
That's another rant for another day.
Yeah, but I will say, Air, Moneyball kind of took the same narrative. They want you to root for the underdog. They are putting it right out on Front Street, and I thought that Air was a little more subtle touch in painting that that mood for us. Moneyball puts the numbers right out in front twice within the first 10 minutes. So I was like, all right. I was kind of like, all right, we get it. We want to root for the A's. We want to see how undermanned they are. We want to see how they're fighting an uphill battle all the time, and they've got a cheap owner. Now, the other thing, I thought it was just a little bit heavy-handed. I'm jumping around a little bit in the timeline of this movie, but Jonah Hill, he is in this movie. He is Pete. He is the main like influence with the stats and using the analytic approach to baseball and stuff. And Billy Beane kind of comes around on it. And I thought there was a little heavy-handedness that as Jonah Hill's character is walking into the stadium after leaving Cleveland and deciding to come to Oakland, they time it so that the banners are coming down and just hitting the ground. It's like,
there goes Jason Giambi, there goes Johnny Damon, there goes Jason Isringhausen, who they lost in free agency in 2001. Yeah.
Which I had remembered Johnny Damon. I had remembered Jason Giambi, obviously, because as Yankee fans, we know where he signed. And then we know why he took the number 25, because 2 + 5 = 7. And he's a huge Mickey Mantle guy. We get it. But I had completely forgotten about Jason Isringhausen, who was a great closer in his day. That was a name that I had forgotten that he was another acquisition. I'm trying to remember if he went to the Angels after that, or maybe the Mets.
I think he went to the Mets, and then he concluded his career with the St. Louis Cardinals.
Oh, okay.
Let me check in real time.
All right, yeah. And while you check that, I'll just say overall, I wasn't disappointed with this. I think if I had watched this movie on its own and hadn't watched Air first, I probably would have had a better opinion of this movie. For me, it just, after watching Air, to me, it paled in comparison, um, for multiple reasons, which I can get into a little later down the line. But I want to get your thoughts on the movie when you are prepared. But just I'm not saying that there weren't some good parts of this movie, but I just thought overall Air was the much more superior film, and I'll say that Ben Affleck's director touch was a little less heavy-handed, in my opinion, than this movie.
Okay, so I did the background check here. The research here. So Isringhausen started his career with the Mets. He was drafted
Okay.
by the Mets originally. He was actually one of their big pitching prospects back in the day. Drafted in the 44th round of the 1991 amateur draft, right out of high school. And he went to played with the Mets, getting traded to Oakland, and then he signed with St. Louis in 2002, became one of their best closers, and was with them until 2008. Then he went to the Rays, then he went to the Mets, and he concluded his career with the Angels. So you were technically right
Okay.
about Isringhausen going to the Angels. It just didn't happen until his final season in the major league. So
Okay.
what's fascinating about Isringhausen is that he was originally a starter. He was originally pegged to be a starter
Oh, yeah.
with the Mets. Didn't quite pan out, and then he found his niche in Oakland when he became their closer. And in 2000, he was an all-star, finished with 33 saves, and he actually in 2002 or 2001, he saved 34 games. So
Mhm.
yeah, he was an effective closer, which is probably why he was very coveted as a reliever in the
Yeah.
day, and won a World Series with St. Louis in 2006. So he had a decent career. Giambi, I believe he was on the Yankees in 2009 when they won the World Series, and we all know Johnny Damon
Think.
was on the 2004 and 2007 teams with the Boston Red Sox before,
Yep.
with helping them break the curse. But no, we don't like to talk about it. But I took Dietz's Chris Dietz's I wouldn't say advice, but I had that in the back of my mind. It's a boring movie. It's a boring movie. I wouldn't say it was a boring movie. It was very
No.
slow moving.
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah.
looking at the time for the movie, like 2 hours and 13 minutes. How can you fit like a season in 2 hours and 13 minutes? And I think part of that was really the unnecessary adding of the scenes of Billy Beane as a high school kid. Was drafted by the Mets. Mets
Mhm.
wanted to sign him because they thought he would be a great 5-tool player, be the future of the team. Unfortunately, it didn't pan out. He actually did wind up winning 2 World Series with Minnesota and with Oakland in 87 and 89,
Yeah.
respectively. Wound up winning 2 rings with them, but wasn't really part of their teams. But it was just weird to see. It was just weird to see those flashbacks to when he was a younger player.
Yeah.
I didn't really think it was necessary, but again,
No.
it could have been the fact that he was this guy who had this chip on his shoulder because of his failed career, and he wanted to make it, and he wanted to prove himself as a GM
Yes.
to the rest of the league, but not only to the rest of the league, but to himself. So I think
I
that's part
do.
of the
Yeah, I do. I agree with you. I think that's the reasoning behind why the director did it. They wanted to paint Billy Bean and show why he kind of had this drive, to really prove himself in his second chapter of being around the game. And also, maybe to be like, oh, we maybe also to show that, okay, he didn't pan out, may have been due to injuries or whatever. The later scenes with him wanting to take a chance on Scott Hatteberg, maybe that was
yep.
part of it. But yeah, I agree with you. That's probably at least a few of those could have hit the cutting room floor for me.
Yeah. But I was pleasantly surprised. I didn't realize this that gotta say hi to Wise here. So hi, Wise El Jefe joining us, saying hello, gentlemen. Oh, by the way, I gotta play.
there.
Oh, while Wise is here, we gotta play our PSA for him. we gotta play it.
The following is a public service announcement from Wise El Jefe.
Boston.
This has been a public service announcement from Wise El Jefe.
Glad you're here watching, Wise. Never gets old. Never gets old. But yeah, I mean, I was pleasantly surprised to see Chris Pratt who was playing Scott Hatteberg in the movie. It was funny. I was listening to my buddies Levac and Gaz this afternoon. They were talking about the home run derby tonight, and they had talked about the one part of the one thing about the oh gosh, my train of thought is derailed. Actors who've played baseball in a movie, they would rather see them do a home run derby. So I made up a list. Good. I made up a list of actors who played baseball who could be in the home run derby. So this is who I came up with: Tom Selleck, who was in Mr. Baseball. And Tom Selleck actually did play baseball.
I did not know that.
Yeah, he was actually a baseball player. He actually went to spring training with the Detroit Tigers, I think, in 1970s, and actually made a couple plate appearances. So Tom Selleck, Mr. Baseball. And we have Chris Pratt from Moneyball, based on that one scene with Scott Hatteberg. Then I have hologram Bernie Mac from Mr. 3000 because Mr. Bernie Mac is no longer with us.
Yeah. I
have Dennis Haysbert, who was from Major League. I have Wesley Snipes of Major League fame and The Fan. Hologram Chadwick Boseman, who again has left us too soon, and Frank Thomas, who was in Mr. Baseball.
Oh, okay. I'm gonna add one. Because apparently he's a big baseball fan now. In his role that I'm thinking of, actually, I can add two real quick right now. Robert Redford, because he was in The Natural.
Yes, he was. Yes.
All right. So we can put him in there. And then if I didn't mention him,
yes,
my mom
Dennis
would probably
played Jose Serrano in Major League.
Oh yes. If
you jumbo, I'll do this myself.
And the second person I'm going to mention, if I did not mention him, I think my mom would find a way to come down to me and reprimand me.
Yeah.
One of her big crushes, Kevin Costner. He's been in a few baseball movies, and but I'm thinking of him in For Love of the Game as Billy Chappell. I know Billy Chappell was a pitcher, but I bet you Kevin Costner get in there, hit a few.
Ooh, Wise has one. Benny the Jet Rodriguez.
Oh yeah, Benny the Jet Rodriguez, of course. What about wasn't John C. Reilly in Bull Durham? No.
That was Tim Robbins.
Yeah, okay.
But he was a pitcher too, and Kevin Costner was the catcher, Crash Davis.
Oh yeah, that's right.
He played Crash Davis in Bull Durham.
And I feel like I always say John C. Reilly because somebody in that movie, to my memory, looks like John C. Reilly, even though I know it's not. But I'm probably wrong here. This is probably like a classic. This is probably a classic Sam Weich, Frank Wycheck moment.
I could have also said Danny McBride, who was an Eastbound and Down, but that's a television show and not a movie. So
would have counted it.
But going back to Moneyball, because we lost because the show we went off the rails a little bit, but with Moneyball, it was a bit slow moving for me. The scenes with Billy Beane as a kid were kind of unnecessary, and to see what his career was about were unnecessary. But it was just interesting to see how Moneyball came to be. Like, we kind of know the backstory about Moneyball and how they had to find basically three guys to replace one person in Jason Giambi. Oh, how we do it? Oh, we just and spoiler alert for anybody who hasn't seen it, by the way, but everybody knows this. But this is based on a true story, so I'm pretty sure everybody has. Not everybody, but people have watched the movie or they've read the book, which is what the movie is based off of. But it was interesting to see that you're replacing one guy with the on base percentage. Okay, how are you going to replace Jason Giambi? We'll do it with three guys, and we'll basically take the average of take the three players and we're gonna add up their on base percentage. We're gonna divide it by 3, and bam, there's your replacement for Jason Giambi. Okay, and then we had the methodology of Peter Brand saying, okay, yeah, it's my favorite all-time player is Kevin Youkilis because he generates so many walks.
Yeah.
And they could have gotten Kevin Youkilis, but he did not go to. I don't think he went to Oakland, but
No.
they picked up the pitcher who had the weird arm angle. He was throwing kind of submarine-ish. They picked up Jeremy Giambi. He wound up being traded. They traded Nelson Cruz. They wound up trading their best rookie Pena to the Tigers for basically a bucket of balls and some 3 years worth of soda.
Yeah, because they wanted to, and this grated on me every time.
Justice wanted free soda in the locker room.
They wanted to put, well, yes, I was going to get into that, but they traded Pena because they wanted to put quote unquote Hattie at third base. Every time they said Hattie, it drove me crazy. And let me say, it was nice to see Philip Seymour Hoffman in this movie, the dearly departed Philip Seymour Hoffman, but this was not his best role as Art Howe. I don't know. I mean, I adored Philip Seymour Hoffman as an actor. He is another actor for me, kind of like Paul Giamatti. If Paul Giamatti's in a movie, he makes it better. I felt the same way about Philip Seymour Hoffman. One of my favorite roles he did when he was Lester Bangs in Almost Famous. I loved him in that role, but there were things that this movie was trying to do that it just didn't jive with me, especially after watching Air. I think the fact that we both liked Air so much may have hurt this movie. In our viewings.
It didn't give us the nostalgic jimmies that we had with Air, with the music soundtrack, and it just had its own original music. I mean, I will say the one thing I liked with this movie about Billy Bean, about Brad Pitt being Billy Bean, was that him capturing the anger about hating losing. Every so often because Art Howe didn't put Scott Hatteberg in the lineup, or they're playing jams because after a loss, trying to entertain themselves. He's flipping over desks. He's throwing. He's smashing the radio. I mean, it's great to see Brad Pitt bring up that passion of hating to lose rather than loving to win. Which one do you like doing? Which one are you more passionate about? Are you more passionate about not losing, or are you more passionate about winning? And it just seemed like Billy Bean was more passionate about not losing than winning, which kind of drove the A's. They had that 20+ game winning streak in 2002, which broke the American League record.
Yeah. I was throughout there. There's a couple moments in this movie where you're like, okay, Brad Pitt, he's not carrying this movie, because I don't think the source material is enough for Brad Pitt's a talented actor. I know people have their feelings about Brad Pitt. I myself think he's a talented actor. I was very happy to see that he kept his tradition of always eating in a lot of his scenes. Brad Pitt, it's a thing he does.
It's true.
He did it. He did it in Ocean's 11 like a madman. All of them.
He also did it in A River Runs Through It.
Yep. He's always eating. I don't know if it helps relax him. I don't know what it does, but that man likes to eat. But anyway,
it's a tradition. It's like the Masters. It's tradition like unlike any other.
Yes. So I was happy about that. And also there were a couple scenes where I'm like, okay, like you're talking about, he did do a good job of encapsulating Billy Bean's rage, probably about his career and the way everything panned out. And then the situation he was in Oakland, there's the scenes where he's pleading for more money and the owner just says, no, we're not going to give you more money. I'm charging $1 for a Coke here in Oakland. But for the players,
and even Justice complained about that. It's like, come on, you're making you're getting paid $7 million and you're complaining about not having free Pepsi in the locker room. Come on.
Yeah. But I
gotta wonder if that's the true story. I
don't know. Because that's where this movie had a couple of scenes. the one where he's talking to his scouting department. Billy Bean is Brad Pitt. He's talking to his scouting department, and he's kind of taking them to task because those guys. I mean, I could understand why those guys are getting defensive. They've done a job a certain way for a lot of years. They got a lot of experience, and Brad Pitt's kind of dressing them down. And I forget what the context of the line is, but he says, "Does anybody else have the answer, or else I'm going to point at Pete?" And he just, there's the times where he's just pointing at Pete.
Oh, you're talking to me.
And Jonah Hill just says he gets on base. That was the answer. And he says, if you don't have the answer, I'm going to point at Pete. So there were Brad Pitt did have his moments throughout this movie, but let me ask you, and I feel like I'm monopolizing things, so I'll
no, you're fine. This is a equal partnership in terms of talking here.
The scene that felt so hollow to me was the trade scene when Brad Pitt's in there and they're trying to make that Pena trade work, and they were trying to get, I forget, they ended up settling on a pitcher, but it's like he's calling and he's hanging up, and then he's telling me, okay, the value for such and such is dropping because they're like, we know San Francisco's after him. And I'm sure there's some of that, but to me that rang hollow as probably unrealistic, like just taking it a step too far, like the scene. And then they're high-fiving each other as they're hanging up on one person to get the other person on the phone, and the trade, like the guy plays right into Billy Bean's hands. I'm not so sure that it went down like that. Have you ever seen the football movie Draft Day? Another Kevin Costner movie. Not a great movie. Have you seen it? I mean, it's not great, haven't. But there's I'm going to spoil one small thing, and I'm going to use my one small swear word. In the beginning of this movie, Kevin Costner, he runs the Browns in that movie. He's on the phone with the Seahawks, and the Seahawks fleece him because they know they got him over both barrels. And later in the movie, Kevin Costner then calls the Seahawks back, and he says, I want all my picks back, you pancake eating motherfucker." I doubt that has ever happened. And this scene with Brad Pitt and Jonah Hill trying to make this deal, it just rang like that to me. Mm-hmm. It rang as incredibly untrue. I don't know how you felt about it, but for me, it was a bridge too far.
It kind of gave me the idea of what goes on in the back rooms of GMs during trade deadline. Mm-hmm. According to Baseball Reference, I'm looking at Carlos Pena's career statistics here. So he was traded on July 5th, 2002 as part of a 3-team trade by the Oakland Athletics with a player to be named later and Franklin Herman to the Detroit Tigers. The New York Yankees, which is involved in this, is a 3-team trade. So the New York Yankees sent Jason Arnold, John Lloyd Griffin, and Ted Lilly. Ted Lilly, remember that name? Oh,
I remember Ted Lilly, yeah.
To the Oakland A's. The Detroit Tigers sent Jeff Weaver, remember that name?
Oh, yes.
To the New York Yankees. The Detroit Tigers sent Cash to the Oakland Athletics. And then the Oakland Athletics sent Jeremy Bonderman to the Detroit Tigers on August 22nd, 2002, which was the future considerations to complete the trade. So the A's got Ted Lilly, and John Ford Griffin, and a minor leaguer. They also got Cash for Carlos Pena and Franklin Herman.
Yeah. So I'm not 100% sure because I swore there were, it's been a little while since I watched it now, but I remember they were talking about, San Francisco's interested in the guy. So, I mean, I did like seeing that extra special glimpse, but I feel like it just was maybe a little unrealistic. But like you said, they're just trying to paint an idea of what happens.
Ricardo Rincon.
That's who it was, yeah.
That's who it
Rincon.
was.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'm going to look at Ricardo Rincon's trade history here. And he was traded to Oakland for Marshall McDougal. So he wound up getting the guy from Shapiro from who was the GM of the Indians, now Guardians at the time. So
yes,
I mean, to wrap things up, just kind of conclude this segment. Moneyball was an interesting movie. I thought some things dragged a little longer. Brad Pitt is an excellent actor, as we all know. Jonah Hill, great supporting cast.
Yeah. He was who I rooted for in this movie.
Yeah, you rooted for the guy who was kind of the underdog, and he kind of. I would say that more than anyone in the movie, that was the underdog role besides the ace. It was not Billy Bean. It was Peter Bond. It was Peter Brand.
Yeah, because you wanted, and I mean, we all know how it turned out. That's why the movie's being made. But still, you're like, oh man, I hope this works out. And I also, even though he's a former Red Sox, I was rooting for Scott Hatteberg. But but I will say this movie had one cameo I did not expect. It was nice to see Joe Satriani playing the national anthem on opening day for that 2002 season.
2002, yeah.
Yeah. So it was nice to see. If nobody has looked up the guitar stylings of Joe Satriani, go and check him out after the show. Download the song "Day at the Beach." It's one of the best two-finger tapping songs. I love that song.
That, and also Friends.
Friends
is a great song too. That was the song that got me into him. All right, so we're gonna take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we're gonna start a new segment called The Lists. But in the meantime, we'll be right back. You're watching or listening to No Credentials Required. This episode of No Credentials Required is brought to you by Invader Coffee. For the coffee lover who wants good, quality coffee with no bullshit and no filler, Invader Coffee is an ultra-premium, veteran-owned coffee company proudly delivering only the best coffee your hard-earned money can buy. They aim to only serve the highest quality, organic, air-roasted coffee beans sourced from free trade farms all over the world. They keep things simple. The best coffee at an affordable price in order to provide you with the value you deserve for your morning boost. 100% fair trade, 100% organic coffee beans, 100% air roasted, 100% money back guarantee. Visit invadercoffee.com, enter promo code BELLYUP at checkout, and receive 15% off your order. That's right, folks. Invader Coffee. For the best coffee your money can buy, go to our affiliate link in the description on YouTube and on Facebook. Also, if you're watching the podcast, click on that link or copy that link, put it in your browser. Help the show. It's an affiliate link. Help the show. Also get 15% off your order with promo code BELLYUP. I got to order some more coffee myself, so it's about that time. I got myself a new bag of coffee. Also got to get myself a new set of Keurig cups because I like to have a little blood boost in the afternoon, mid-morning or afternoon, for just for myself. But yeah, Invader Coffee. Dustin, I know you've been enjoying the Invader Coffee. Are you still working on the donut dealer, or are you out of that?
I still have some donut dealer left. I'm getting low, so I might have to re-up. I also have.
Well, the donut dealer is currently sold out, unfortunately.
Oh no! Oh
yeah,
no. See,
but they got plenty of other blends. They have plenty of other blends to choose from now.
They do, and I still have. I always have the Invader. I don't know what to call it, but the main Invader blend. The Invader coffee.
The OG. The OG.
Yeah, the Trailblazer. I always have some of that on hand. So, but you are right. I'm in the same position as you. I've got to get some new coffee because I am down to a little bit of the donut dealer and the OG blend. So I got to re-up myself.
Yeah, they got plenty of great blends, such as the Wake the Bones, which is a nice little medium dark blend. They've got Break in Case of Emergency blend, which is pretty fun, which is pretty great. They have another blend I haven't tried yet, the Warhorse Bacon Bourbon Coffee blend.
That's saw
an
that
interesting one.
I went to get it, but by the time I had gone around, I think they were out of it. But it sounds like it's back in stock. But I don't know if I want to pull the trigger. Sometimes bacon's one of my favorite things, coffee's one of my favorite things, and bourbon is one of my favorite things. But sometimes when you put them together, I don't know how the marriage is going to go. But if anybody can figure it out, it's Invader. So maybe
it's not so much of a marriage, but it's a throuple.
Yeah. And they're all very strong flavors. So
they are very strong
to see who wins out. I'm going bourbon.
That's for sure. But yeah, visit the affiliate link, help the show out, buy some coffee, get 15% off, and get 15% off your order with the promo code BELLYUP. You won't be disappointed. You have it, and because it has the no credentials required seal of approval. No, it will not make the noise.
Yeah, that's
Look at that
still
pup.
one of
It's
my
cute.
favorite moments in the history of the show. I mean, we've had a lot of them. I mean, the onesie episode was great. The ranking of the Thanksgiving sides, I love that. Having all of the guest episodes, I loved having Wise on, loved having Snowman on, Brian Cake.
Have those guys back. Yep.
The list goes on and on, but that's going to be top 10 moments of the show for me for a long time.
Well, speaking of list, Dustin, we got ourselves a new segment called, appropriately enough, The List.
Perfect.
You just made the list!
Oh my gosh.
That dude was aggressive. I like it.
That's Chris Jericho.
Oh, man. I did not recognize it.
Yeah, that's Chris. That's Chris
man.
Jericho from like 2016, 2017 WWE.
Oh, man. He is a legend now.
He is the GOAT. He is the GOAT. But yeah, no, we've got our new segment called The List, and I figured we could do some. Since this is summer, this is kind of a time where we don't really cover baseball on this podcast. We're more of a football podcast. NFL training camps are starting up. Hip hip hooray!
Yeah,
that starts up pretty soon. But we're gonna do something different in the summer. And one of the things we're gonna do is called The List, and we're gonna list. This week, we're going to do our 5 greatest athletes to never play for our teams. And this was based off of an episode I just did with the Corner Booth pregame, the Corner Booth podcast with my buddy Jared and his co-host Matt. I filled in last week for their host, other host Mason, who was in Europe, and I'm pretty sure he was in those France riots. But I'm just kidding about that.
Oh, you got me. You got me good. Just like the way you said it, like so often. I fell right into your trap.
That was inappropriate, but I was warranted for it. No, but Jared came up with the 5 greatest athletes to never play for our teams. I figured we'd carry it over into this episode. I revealed my 5 on Corner Booth, but I figured I'd come back to it and reveal my 5 on this week's episode. But I'm going to have Dustin start off with his first athlete. So, Dustin, who is the first athlete on your list to never play for your favorite teams?
Okay, so these aren't in any particular order. When you first asked me this question, I just started writing the names, and I will say I shocked myself with the first name, but it was the first name that came to mind. Maybe it was because we watched Moneyball, and I got that era's baseball on the mind. I would have loved to seen, and it would have been an embarrassment of riches. I get that. So nobody come at me on Twitter and say, but you were a Yankees fan.
Oh, don't worry. I've got one for the Yankees too. But
I would have loved to see Ken Griffey Jr. suit up for the New York Yankees.
Actually, that's funny. That was one name that came up on the Corner Booth. That was one name that came up.
Because, and I will say, now, I got to caveat this. My relationship with Ken Griffey Jr. has changed over the years. When he was playing the game, I actively despised him. I thought he was arrogant. I thought he was, I just didn't. It was one of those things where I was younger. I was a little bit like old-fashioned. I didn't like the fact that he wore the hat backwards at the home run derby. Like I was like a curmudgeon for my age. I was like, hey, I don't like this. But it also
snappers with that backwards hat.
Yeah. And it could have stemmed from the fact that he was my first live Yankees game ever. They played the Mariners, and it was the season where Griffey, at the time, Griffey was he was up there with McGuire and Sosa for the home run chase, and then those two distanced themselves. But Griffey still finished the year, I think, with 54 home runs, if I'm not mistaken. So he had a great year, but the Mariners beat the Yankees 13-2 that day. So maybe I held a grudge. Maybe I held a grudge against Ken Griffey Jr. But I'm going to say, as I got older, I began to appreciate his swing more. He had the smoothest swing. I mean, it's textbook. And the fact, stick with me here, the fact that his body broke down to me was like, okay, Griffey did this legitimately, because he's getting injured, and the rest of these guys that did whatever they did during the long ball era, they didn't break down like he did. He broke
Right.
down, aged, and I had more respect for him. And also, when I heard his reasoning one time for taking the contract to go play for the Reds, yes, they offered him a lot of money, but when he talked about, his father played for that team and everything that he kind of wanted to repair the relationship between Cincinnati and his father. I could be wrong about this, but there were other reasons why he went to Cincinnati. My respect for Ken Griffey Jr. grew as I got older. I would have loved to see him patrolling the outfield in pinstripes at Yankee Stadium.
He also said he would. The thing is, though, with Ken Griffey Jr., I remember him saying that the reason why I wasn't a big fan of his was because he said he would never, ever play for the New York Yankees.
Mm-hmm.
Reason why is because when his dad played in New York, Billy Martin did not allow kids in the clubhouse.
Yes.
And he always held that against the Yankees. Not Billy Martin specifically, but the New York Yankees.
Mm-hmm.
So whenever he played against the Yankees, that's when he seemed to have his best games, especially as a Mariner.
Oh, yeah.
He killed
as a
our team
Mariner, he crushed us. I mean,
Ugh.
come on. But yeah, I would have loved. So who is first on your list? And by the way, shouts to Jared for coming up with this idea.
Yeah, this is a great idea. So shout out to Jared on this one. So the first athlete on my list, and this is not a ranked list. This is just a list we're putting together. The first one on my list was Tony Gwynn as a New York Yankee.
Oh my God, he's one of my favorite players. I cannot believe I didn't write him down.
Mine too. Wow. I remember when I was in high school, I had the poster on my wall of him with the hitting machine as the hitting machine, and it had the mechanics of this swing. And I tried to model my swing like him because I wasn't a lefty, but I loved his playing style. He was just always seemed to get on base with a hit. Had one of the almost had a 4. He was going for the 400 average in 1994 before, unfortunately, the strike ended the season.
I think he finished at 394.
393 or 300. Yeah, 393 because I remember there's a beer in San Diego that had 393 pale ale.
Yes,
and it had the Padres old colors, the brown and the orange and the yellow, which is so cool. I don't know if they still make that beer anymore, but I want to find out if they do.
Yeah,
And they said that a portion of that beer went to the Tony Gwynn Foundation.
Yes, because a little bit inside baseball, pun intended. I was trying to find that beer, especially during COVID, because I was like, there's nothing to do. But they were shut down. I tried to order it online. The brewery, if memory serves, is based in San Diego, so I was trying to order it online.
And you are right. It was 394. It was 394. I was wrong.
But it's a very rare occurrence on the show,
No.
But I'm almost never right. But anyway, I was able to find the beer at Colony Star Beverage here in New York. They had it, and it was a little dusty, so I don't know how old it was, but I took it off the shelf, 6-pack, tried it. Good beer. I would have again.
Mm-hmm.
I would have
Me too. Hopefully I can find it somewhere. I think I found it. I think I found my 394 pale ale at Glenville Beverage. That's where I found it. Yeah, I traveled far and wide to get some beer, and Glenville Beverage happened to have it. So, but yeah, Tony Gwynn playing in New York with the number 19, the pinstripes. He had been to the World Series twice, and unfortunately lost both times.
Yeah.
But if he went to the Yankees, he would have won multiple World Series. And being a left-handed hitter with that short porch in right field, I know he wasn't a big home run hitter. I don't think he even eclipsed 200 home runs for his career.
Yeah,
but
I don't know.
But his hitting style, the way he got on base, he wasn't the fastest runner, but he knew how to. I just knew how to get it. He just always got on base, got a hit, and it's a shame that really cool that he spent his entire career as a San Diego Padre. It's really cool to see that on the stat sheet. You don't really see that anymore, where you see a player play his entire career with one team.
Mhm.
But if Tony Gwynn were to go somewhere and he would have been a superstar, it would have been New York. Would have been with New York with the New York Yankees, and it's. I wish I would have had him on our Yankees. It would have
Oh,
been
man.
been so much fun to watch. I mean, it's great. We had Ichiro for a couple seasons.
Yes.
Because I watched him. I think I saw his first game in New York when he was traded from the Mariners to the Yankees.
Mhm.
Back in 2012, if I can remember correctly. But I remember him hitting a home run that day. Because I got free tickets from Hess, what used to be Hess Gas
Oh,
Hess
wow.
Gas,
Okay.
and what you would do is that you would fill up your tank X amount of times, and you get 2 free tickets to a Yankee game. So I got to see the Yankees and I think it was the Orioles, and it was the first game of Ichiro playing in a Yankees uniform, and he hit a home run that day. So, but it
Wow.
would have been fun to see Tony Gwynn in a Yankees uniform, just spraying the ball everywhere. Maybe get a home run every
Oh,
once in a while
yeah.
with the short porch. Legend.
Yeah, I mean, because you are on the button. He did not eclipse 200 home runs for his career. According to Baseball Reference, do you want to take a guess at the number of career home runs Tony Gwynn had?
I want to say 198.
Okay, he a little high. I was shocked to see this number, 135.
Oh my.
135, which is why I'm like, I don't know, but it says career right here. His wins above replacement percentage, though, 69.2, or his number of wins above replacement, 69.2. That's pretty good. His career batting average. This is where the man earned his money,
Mm-hmm.
and then why he's one of the greatest players. His career batting average is 338.
Yep.
That's something special right there.
That's what made him a great, but arguably the greatest hitter of our generation.
Yeah.
Period. Not home run, not slugger, but hitter.
I would say, and just as sometimes it pulls you because a few years ago, my sister and I decided to do the Bourbon Trail down in Louisville, Kentucky. Well, sections of the Bourbon Trail. We didn't do the whole thing, but as part of it, I said, "Hey, I want to go to the Louisville Slugger Bat Museum," and it was a great stop on the trip. I'd recommend that you go there if you're ever in Louisville. But they had you could hold bats that were game used by certain players, and people would think because I'm a Yankee fan, I'm going to hold Derek Jeter's bat. I'm going to hold somebody else's. There is a picture of me holding Tony Gwynn's bat. As soon as I saw that Tony Gwynn's bat was there, I went and I grabbed it. It was just like the first one that I grabbed. I was like, I got to hold this bat, and I did not. I ended up holding Jeter's bat later and some other players, but Tony Gwynn's bat was the first one I went for.
Yeah, it's definitely gonna be my first bat if I ever go to the Louisville Slugger Museum. That's for sure. Sure. All right, so I'm gonna go with the second. I'm gonna go next with my second greatest athlete to never play for my team. I'm a low-key soccer fan. And I was a New York Red Bull supporter for the 2016 season. I know Dustin and I took Dustin to a game when they played his Seattle Sounders.
Yeah.
He
F
refused.
the Timbers.
Yeah. We went to a game where we heard the greatest radio call of all time.
Oh, home. Yeah.
The Brown and the Black from behind. But if there's one soccer player I would have loved to have on the New York Red Bulls, because if he would have won the MLS Cup with them, he would have been part of the New York pantheon of soccer gods, GAWDS, along with Pele, Franz Beckenbauer, all those guys from the New York Cosmos, David Beckham.
Ooh.
David Beckham, I would have loved to have David Beckham as a New York Red Bull. I understand he went to the Los Angeles Galaxy. There's a reason for it.
Yeah.
He had plenty of reasons to go, but basically because of the Hollywood connections he had and whatnot. But I get it. But I think his career would have been a lot different if he had joined the New York Red Bulls as opposed to the LA Galaxy. And I think he would have won a couple cups with them, which is it's. I mean, I know that the Red Bulls have had their share of stars. You had Thierry Henry on their team for a couple seasons. That was what that's what that whole thing between Beckham and Henry. You saw a lot of the former European stars come to the MLS to conclude their career. I mean, look at Lionel Messi. He's playing in Inter. He's playing with Inter Miami right now, and wherever he's going, they're selling out. They're selling out tickets there. So it's great to have those former European stars who are kind of sunsetting their career here in the United States. I would have liked to have David Beckham as part of the New York Red Bulls. It would have been really fun to see.
Oh yeah.
Dustin, who's your next athlete?
My next athlete, here we go, and I feel like it's obligatory at this point. I know it would have never happened, and honestly, it would have looked really weird, and I don't know if it would have helped in the 90s, but I'd love to see Michael Jordan suit up for the Mavs. I mean, that would have been cool. I was like, he's the greatest by a lot of people's measure. He is the greatest basketball player of all time. And it would have been great to have him in Dallas because maybe they wouldn't have been so futile back in the day. But I don't really have much to say about MJ, and I'm not talking Wizards MJ either. Although at that point, I probably would have taken Wizards MJ because he had some moments with the Wizards. People forget about it, but he was not to come back at his age and play at the level that he did. Yes, it wasn't vintage Jordan, but it was still impressive, at least in my mind. At least in my mind.
In the 90s, the 90s Mavs would have had, you had Jason Kidd, Jamal Mashburn, Jackson. I'm trying to remember his first name.
Oh, yeah. Was it Jamal
Jackson? Jim Jackson.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Then have Michael Jordan.
Yeah. I mean, that would have been ridiculous. I mean, no disrespect to Michael Finley, but I'll take another Michael, please. but yeah, it would have been amazing. I don't really have much else to add, but I feel like Michael Jordan had to make the list.
Yeah, and I remember the three Jays playing. There was so much dysfunction. They were so talented together. They were so great together on the court, but off the court, they were a dumpster fire.
Yeah, it was terrible.
So much drama behind the scenes.
I still remember the Jason Kidd, and I know he's coaching now, and I know he went on to have the career that he had, and I'll love him because he was part of that Mavs team that finally got over the hump. But he was real. They interviewed him after he got drafted, and he was like, "Oh yeah." And I think I've mentioned this on the show before, but I find it so humorous. Here it is again. He was like, "Oh yeah, we're gonna turn this franchise around. We're gonna take it a complete 360 degrees." Well, Jason, if you take it a complete 360 degrees, you end up right back where you started. So
athletes are not exactly the smartest people in the world. I don't know what to tell you. All right, why don't you go ahead for the next athlete?
All right. So in keeping with the 90s NBA theme here, this one I have a little bit more to say about because this man went on to be perhaps one of the most dominant players at his position, but I'm talking a very specific version of this next player. And it's partially because Dallas never had a center. They were always looking for one. They had Sean Bradley. They signed
I know where you're going.
They signed Eric Dampier to a big contract. Always looking for a center. I remember people were excited about Brandon Haywood. No disrespect. But 90s Shaq, I'm talking Orlando Magic Shaq, where he was, not only was he Shaq, but he could run like a gazelle. Go back and watch some of the early 90s footage of Shaq on the Orlando Magic. I would love to see him on the Mavs. He would have crushed. And then just imagine, this is already a crazy world, but imagine that Cuban. Well, I'm trying to remember when Cuban bought the team. But imagine Dallas ownership shells out enough money to keep Shaq so that he doesn't leave. He doesn't go from Orlando to LA, or in my scenario, from Dallas to LA. And then he would get Dirk a few years later. I mean, they could have done some serious damage.
Yeah. Mark Cuban did not buy the Mavericks until 2000.
Yeah. So I knew. I'm trying to remember who the. Well, when did Shaq leave for the Lakers? Was it 01?
Shaq left. No, it was a few
Oh yeah, it was
years
like 90.
after. It was in the mid '90s. It was
Yeah, that's right.
or
I forgot.
'97 or '98 because it was after his rookie contract had ended.
Yes, that's right. And because I remember they said, "Oh, we got." They put together Orlando put together the offer for him and went out and flew it to Amato, Chuck's agent or Shaq's agent, and he said. And the guy from the Magic was like, they're like, oh, this is very nice, thank you, I'll get it to him. And the guy from the Magic said, I just told him it's finished, isn't it? We lost him, and man, that was another great. You should watch that 30 for 30. This Magic moment.
Oh, I've watched it.
I've
watched it a couple of times, and
Yeah.
I remember him saying, "Yeah, I should have never left for. I should have never have left Orlando." And to
Mhm.
think what's happened with the Orlando Magic since then.
Oh
They-
yeah,
especially these days. I mean, oh my gosh, what a tragic story! What a franchise tragic story that was. I mean, yeah,
No.
I mean they had Dwight Howard, who was I
Yeah.
wouldn't say he was generational. I remember he had this quote this past weekend or last week, sometime last week about him. He said, "Oh, I would have taken Nikola Jokic to school." I'm like, "No, you wouldn't.
Oh yeah,
You had
yeah.
one tool. You had one tool in your arsenal. And that was slam dunking. That
Yeah.
was it.
Yeah,
That's it."
and he said the thing was he said and defensively Dwight Howard was very good in his prime as well.
Yeah, in his
But
prime.
but yeah, exactly. Even his own quote undermines him because he said, "Oh, Jokic is doing this with threes. I did all this with twos." And I'm like, you just low key alluded to the fact that you couldn't shoot the ball
Exactly.
for anything.
No.
And Jokic can. So
And
there you go.
what's interesting about Howard, he had the same career trajectory as Shaq.
Yeah.
As soon as his time as Orlando was up, he got traded to the Lakers, and unfortunately he kind of
Yeah.
his career kind of crash landed after that because he played with Kobe, and Kobe was the alpha male of that team, and whatever he said went. But
Yep.
all right, so my third athlete to never play for our teams, and this is not so much a team, but a league or the organization, the UFC.
Okay.
Gina Carano.
Oh.
From the Mandalorian, who from the Fast and Furious series. If you're a Daily Wire subscriber, Terror on the Prairie. She's also in Deadpool, the first Deadpool movie. She still has 4 fights on her contract when she was with Strikeforce, and Strikeforce was bought out by the UFC. She still has 4 fights left on that contract. Unfortunately, she's not fighting anymore. She's 42. She's in her mid or early 40s. I mean, I've seen fighters come back in their 40s, like Randy Couture. He was in his 40s when he won a title. But I would have loved to see Gina Carano in the UFC. And again, I will fully admit, one of my women crushes is Gina Carano. But I think Dana White would have done such a great job marketing her as like the superior female fighter in that league. I mean, yeah, you had Ronda Rousey in the UFC. You had Amanda Nunes, who just concluded her career. She retired as a champion. But Gina Carano in the UFC would have been something to see, because I think she would have. I think what Ronda Rousey did elevate the women's division, but I think having her in a rivalry with Gina Carano would have astronomically lifted that division in the women's division. Period.
Yeah, it would have been interesting to see, because she was a huge attraction for multiple reasons, and she had star power.
Yes,
in a time where the UFC wasn't exactly mainstream yet. It was on its way. But I think it was I would say just before it really broke, just before the reality shows on Spike TV and everything really pushed it in to more of a household name and stuff. But yeah, that would have been interesting to see, I think.
Yeah, and the fact that, I mean, we talked about, I think the women's division, women's division now is really good, but man, Gina Carano is in the women's division would have been just a huge, huge deal. My fourth athlete, and we're going back to the 90s NBA. I don't know if you know this, Dustin. In addition to being a Chicago Bulls fan, I love Jordan. Love the way I love that team, those teams in the 90s. I was also a New Jersey Nets fan because that's when they were coming to their own.
Yeah.
Derek Coleman, Drazen Petrovic, may he rest in
Oh,
peace.
yeah.
Sherman Douglas, Chris Morris, those guys. Chuck Daly was actually the coach of the Nets for 2 seasons after he retired, after he was let go or retired from the Pistons.
Mm-hmm.
I would have loved to see Dennis Rodman as a New Jersey Net for the time that Chuck Daly was in New Jersey.
Oh,
Because
man.
I remember the documentary. I remember from The Last Dance about how Dennis's Rodman's career in Detroit just kind of went haywire after Chuck Daly left because he didn't have anyone he was that father figure that he was missing throughout his entire life.
Yeah.
And I would have loved to see the New Jersey Nets pick up Dennis Rodman because I think that they would have, instead of the New York Knicks, I think the New Jersey Nets would have challenged the Chicago Bulls for supremacy in the Eastern Conference during that period of the 90s where the Knicks was starting to come up we're starting to come in with Pat Riley.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I just think Dennis Rodman would have been he would have had Chuck Daly in his corner.
Yeah.
At every disposal. He had the great shooting of Drazen Petrovic. He had another rebounding threat with Derek Coleman, the Sherman Douglas playing the point, Chris Morris doing all the small forward things like a Scottie Pippen role. I think they would have challenged the Bulls for mid-90s supremacy in the Eastern Conference in the NBA.
Yeah, I mean, Rodman, you hear his teammates talk about how important he was.
Mm-hmm.
You know, even though they didn't always agree with Dennis in the way that he carried himself and all the other kind of antics and things that he did around basketball. He's a rebounding machine and a high effort player.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the former Bulls players and his former Pistons teammates are very complimentary and talk about just how important he was. So that would have been something to see. I think it's just nostalgia, but anything having to do with like 80s, 90s NBA right now, I'm into it. You know, I'm watching it. I'm reading about it. I read a few years ago, I read Bill Simmons' Book of Basketball, and that kind of really got me in the mold of like wanting to go back and check some things out. But I think nostalgia's hitting me big time right now. That early 90s NBA pocket, we didn't realize what we had, man.
Every Saturday morning at 11:30, I would watch. In my teenage years, I would watch NBA Inside Stuff with Ahmad Rashad and Willow Bay. I had such a crush on Willow Bay. Who didn't?
Yeah. Come on.
All right, who's your fourth there, Dustin?
All right, now my fourth. This is a technicality, okay, and this is kind of dovetailing into maybe a future topic on the show on this segment. And people are going to bark at me. They're going to say, well, he did play for them. But mine's more of what if he had stayed? What if Wayne Gretzky never left the Oilers? How many more cups could they have won? How many more? How much more dominant could they have been? Wayne Gretzky's the one that got away, and arguably you could argue that it was better for the NHL that he left. And we've talked. There's been a documentary about it. We've also talked about it. It could be
King's Ransom.
Yeah, it was arguably better for the NHL that he left. But selfishly, as an Oilers fan, you have to wonder what might have been. That's, even though he technically played for my team, it's more of a what if he stayed on those Edmonton Oilers because he was still very young.
Yeah. I mean, that's definitely a different conversation for another day about sports, the great sports what ifs, and maybe we'll get to that next week. But so Dustin, coming to the conclusion of this segment, who is your fifth and final athlete who never played for your team?
Oh, the fifth and final athlete to me is maybe one of the biggest It's maybe my biggest shot here out of it. And I've got some great ones on here. You've had some great ones. I can't believe I omitted Tony Gwynn. I'll give myself a penalty after the show, 2 minutes in the box. But
Feel shame.
Barry Sanders back there running for the Seahawks. I don't care what offensive line. He played in Detroit, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And for a lot of and yes, they did have some receivers, and with the Wayne Fontes years, they were an okay team, okay? But he never had a quarterback, and they had some wide receivers, and he was making magic out there all the time. And as I remember Emmitt Smith saying, on an episode of A Football Life, I'm watching a lot of like documentary TV, whatever. But Emmitt Smith said we shut down. There was, I think it was a 1991 playoff game between Barry Sanders and his Detroit Lions and Emmitt Smith and his Dallas Cowboys.
Yep, that was the 91 divisional, the playoff divisional round. Yep. And
so Emmitt's sitting there. He's saying, we're kind of shutting down Barry for the first half. The team is feeling themselves. And I told him he's going to get going. All it takes is one for Barry, and it's going to be over. And he talks about a run where Barry, it was
a sweep to the right.
Yeah, and there was a lineman, Tony. I'm trying to remember who the lineman was, but he's looking to kind of see where
Tony Casillas.
Yes, Tony Casillas. And he's looking to see where Barry Sanders is. And Emmitt and they stop the clip, and you see the guy like looking like this. And Emmitt says, "He's behind you, Tony." And then he said, he made them look like straight up fools. And Barry Sanders did that to everybody. I would have loved to see him run wild in Seattle.
Yeah, I got you there. I got you there. Yeah, that's for sure. All right, so my fifth and final athlete. I wish this defenseman would have played for the New Jersey Devils, because if he had played for the New Jersey Devils, this would have been a straight up dynasty in the early 2000s. Ray Bourque.
Oh, man.
As a New Jersey Devil.
Whoa.
If I remember this, back in the 2001 season, it was right after the Devils had won the Cup in 2000. Boston was a dog's breakfast back then, and Ray Bourque was just kind of stuck, in playing in Boston. And I knew they were going to be sellers at the trade deadline. I'm thinking to myself, oh man, if Ray Bourque would play for the Devils, they're going to win the Stanley Cup again. They're going to win the Stanley Cup again. Unfortunately, Colorado Avalanche.
Yes, I was going to say
those charlatans. Those charlatans swooped on in and picked up Ray Bourque at the trade deadline, and the rest is history.
Yeah.
And if Ray Bourque had gone to the Devils would have repeated. The Devils would have won Game 6 at home at the Meadowlands to beat Colorado or whoever they played that season to win their second straight Stanley Cup, and which is fine. I mean, they won the Stanley Cup 2 years later in 2003. But man, if Ray Bourque wound up as a New Jersey Devil and won a Stanley Cup in New Jersey, I think they would have built a statue for him outside the Prudential Center, with him raising the Stanley Cup. Unfortunately, Colorado got him. They won the Stanley Cup, and it's the rest is history.
And that's sad.
That's very sad.
But I will say, I mean, I remembered because I was like, yeah, he went to the Avs, and I'm sitting there and I'm trying to remember. But who do you think hated the Avs more, you as a Devils fan, or those Red Wings fans?
Red Wings fans, hands down.
I remember. Oh man, those rivalry. That rivalry was intense for a minute there. That was something.
Yeah, we've had my buddy Captain Lou from the Captain Lou Experience.
Yes.
He absolutely despises the Colorado Avalanche with a white hot burning passion. But we covered the Brian Snow show a couple weeks ago. I had him on the Wednesday show, and we talked about, we were doing a live reaction of the Hockey Hall of Fame inductions, and Mike Vernon was inducted. And he was reminiscing about that 1997 season when Vernon went 16-4 in that postseason, which is unheard of.
Yeah, that's unconscious.
Only 4 losses in a single season, in a single postseason, which is insane. But he reminisced about how the Red Wings got over the hump, beating the Avalanche in the Western Conference Final to get to the Stanley Cup Final, and they swept Philadelphia to win the Stanley Cup. So yeah, Red Wings fans hate the Avalanche more than Devils fans in 2001.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
I do have just a couple of honorable mentions. I'll just list them real quick. John Elway. Apparently the Seahawks there were discussions with the Seahawks about him possibly coming to play quarterback. That would have been something in that 83 draft. This one is also, I wish he had stayed. Steve Nash. Very early in Dirk's career, Steve Nash was on the Mavs. They had a budding friendship. They didn't really get to play together that long. I would have liked to see what they could have done together once Dirk became what he would become, and once Steve Nash continued to do Steve Nash things. And once again, Jerry Rice, but a specific version. Yes, Jerry Rice did play for my Seahawks, but it was at the very much the end of his career. I would have loved to see Jerry suited up when he was in his prime.
Yeah, that's for sure. Before we take our last commercial break, we're going to go to our comments section. Chris Dietz from Fifth Down Sports, who we talked about in the first segment.
There we go.
Says, just tuning in, can't wait to see and go back and see your take about Moneyball. I've already said it's the worst sports movie to me. We also talked about the Tony Gwynn strike season killed Tony Gwynn. He was on pace to break 400. Yeah, indeed he was. Did you hold? He asked when you were in the Louisville Slugger factory, did you hold the club Piazza use? Because it takes 2 people to lift that tree trunk. I would argue the same thing for Babe Ruth's bat, because I've seen Babe Ruth's bat in Cooperstown, and that thing was a club. That was like Captain Caveman Club. 90 Shack Dallas ownership would have gone bankrupt sooner from broken backboards. Yeah, that was right before. That was before Cuban got in there. He also says I met Gina Carano twice. Jealous. She's the nicest person ever. Yeah, she seems like a sweetheart. So that's I guess part of the attraction, I guess, for me. By the way, Gina, call me. Derek Coleman and Dennis Rodman would have killed each other in the locker room. Yeah, but here's the thing. Chuck Daly was the calming influence in Dennis Rodman's life. He's the first one to one of the first ones to believe in him as an athlete and be the elite player that he could have, the elite defensive player that he was back in the 90s when he won all those Defensive Player of the Year awards, particularly in 1991.
Yeah, and that can't be overstated, because look at another example, Customato and Mike Tyson. Mm-hmm. Look at Tyson's career when Cuss was his trainer. He kind of kept him he kind of kept him regulated. He kept his eye on the prize. And Tyson himself has said once he lost Cuss, he didn't know what to do anymore. No,
because Don King got his tentacles on him, and the rest is history, unfortunately. Yeah. And then lastly, before we go to our last commercial break, Chris Dietz says, Lawrence Taylor, interestingly enough, when I met LT a few years ago, he said the team I always wanted to play with was the Dallas Cowboys. Giants fans in Connecticut weren't happy, but I cheered. Chris Dietz is a Dallas Cowboys fan, so but he said he would have loved to have LT on his team. All right, take our last commercial break, then we'll do some questions for humans, or do a question for humans questions for humans, and we'll wrap up the show. So you're listening to No Credentials Required. Hey everyone, it's Ryan from No Credentials Required to talk to you about one of our newest partners at Belly Up Sports, SeatGeek. Yeah, live sports is great on television, but the feeling of being at the arena is a priceless experience. That's why our friends at SeatGeek are there to help you find the best tickets at the best prices. Not only can you get tickets to sporting events, but you can also get tickets to concerts, comedy shows, musicals, and more. Search for your desired event now at SeatGeek.com, enter promo code BellyUpSports at checkout, and you save $20 off your first purchase. SeatGeek. Life's an event.
We have the tickets.
That's right, folks. Belly Up Sports has SeatGeek as one of their as one of their affiliate sponsors. You get 20% off $50 with the promo code Belly Up Sports. The NHL, I gotta tell you, the NFL's coming. Major League Baseball's in full effect. NBA hasn't released their schedule yet, but the NHL just released their 2023-2024 schedule. I've got my eye on a particular game in January 4th. That's when the Devils play the Chicago Blackhawks with first round overall pick, Connor Bedard. I'm kind of excited to see what he can do in the NHL. So I've got my calendar circled for that one. So I'm going to look up seats on SeatGeek.com. I'm going to use promo code BELLYUP and get 20% off my 20% off my first order, or $20 off my first order of $50. Go to a game in New Jersey.
Yeah. Why not? The man's planning ahead. You'll be ready to go.
Got that right. So $20 off your first order of $50. Promo code is BellyUpSports. All right, Dustin. Time to play some Questions for Humans Guys Night Edition. I've got my card right here, ready to go. Hopefully, I got a fun one, unlike last week when you asked me what was the last time
I know. And then when you
get the fun one, I got the deep one. I'm like,
I know. And then when you actually answered it, that's why, because I was like, oh, we can get a veto. We get one veto. But when you actually answered it, I was like, all right, I got to pony up. I got to answer as well.
All right. All right. So my question from the Questions for Humans Guys Night card pack: what's the best book you've read recently?
Oh, the best book I've read recently. I don't read as much as I would like to. That's a habit that I'm looking to change. But I would say the best book that I've read recently, and this shows that I don't read as much as I used to. Dave Grohl's autobiography. Very good. Very good. Full disclosure, I am a huge Nirvana fan, but I would say, and nothing against the Foo Fighters, I like some of their songs, but I would say that I'm more of a Dave Grohl fan than a Foo Fighters fan. But his autobiography, very good. A little thin on his time in Nirvana, thinner than I would have liked, but I can understand why. It's probably been done to death. But he talks about his childhood growing up in Virginia. He talks about a lot about his early touring days with a DC hardcore band called Scream, which was what he was in before Nirvana. And then a little bit about his time in Nirvana, but he mostly talks about buying a house in Seattle with that Nirvana money. And it's got the Dave Grohl humor, but he also gets serious. He also talks. The book kind of meanders all over the place. His thoughts on drumming, whether he how he would react when he thought his daughters would want to get into drumming, how he would teach them if that happened. Spoiler, one of them does decide to try to get into drumming. And just how he views his life as trying to be a musician and also a family man. And to me, it was just a very good read. I enjoyed it thoroughly. Even if you are not a fan of Nirvana or the Foo Fighters, I would say pick up that book because there's a lot of things in there.
Okay. All right.
And what about you, if you would like to answer that one?
So like yourself, I don't read as much as I ought to. When we were on vacation at our banks, I was reading a book by special teams coordinator for the Jets back in the day. I can't remember his name off the top of my head. Mike Westhoff.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Figure It Out. I was reading that was his full story about how he got into football, he got into coaching, his cancer surgery. Interesting story about his cancer surgery. What he had to do was that they had removed his femur, replaced it with a steel rod that kind of had taken place of a femur, because that his femur is left femur, because that's where the cancer was.
Oh,
so
geez.
It was really interesting. So I haven't finished that book yet. I got to finish that book, and unfortunately, he won't be able to take media requests because he's now with the Denver Broncos. But I've been getting more into audiobooks lately. because I would listen to it if I'm doing cardio at the gym, or I listen to it while I'm mowing the lawn or snowblowing the driveway. One book I just completed recently that I really, really loved. It's by one of my favorite political commentators but I've also gotten into his fiction novels and his memoir. It's by Andrew Clavin, and it's called The Truth and the Beauty. And what he does in this book is that he links the connection between Christianity and classic English literature.
Okay.
And super fascinating. It's just super fascinating to hear the stories of certain authors, English authors, and how they met what happened to them. And there's this one story about a party between a failing English painter who thought he was the greatest painter in the world. Keats, author Keats, the poet Keats, Wordsworth, and one other poet. I can't remember his name, but like, he just links all these authors and all these stories together, and like try to and weaves in the story of Jesus Christ in with these authors. It's really interesting. And Andrew Clem is the one who narrates the book. So,
okay.
I also really enjoyed his memoir, The Great Good Thing, which he also reads. I have to pick up his Christmas mystery. Yes, there's a Christmas mystery.
Oh man.
And the main character of the book is named Cameron Winter. So I have to pick up the Cameron Winter trilogy. I haven't read that book yet, but I gotta check that out. But yeah, the truth and the beauty by Andrew Clavin. I really thoroughly enjoyed that the reading of that book. I'll have to listen to it again. It's a great listen. And, I listen to it again during car rides. I listen to it during my cardio sessions at the gym, and while I was doing yard work. So it was a really fascinating book, fascinating telling of the interweaving between Christianity and English literature. It was really great. I really enjoyed it.
I like that title too. That's a great title. Yeah,
and what's interesting is that when I was at Regent University, one of the courses was a course called The Truth and the Beauty, and I wanted to take it. Unfortunately, it was an elective, but unfortunately, I could never get in. I could never get into that class.
Yeah, that's the tough part about college is sometimes you got those classes that you just know are going to be filled up.
Yeah.
Back in the day, I had to take this for my major. You can all say what you want. I majored in music industry at a very fine institution, SUNY Oneonta. And as part of my major, I had to take a class called The History of Rock and Roll. Now, the difference is I needed this for my major.
Yeah.
Do you know how many people signed up because they're like, oh, this is an elective and it looks cool? I could not get into the history of rock and roll. It took me 4 semesters.
It's like the history of ice cream class at Greendale Community College. Community history of ice cream. Oh my god! All right, your turn for the question. Hopefully, it's a fun one. Not deep.
All right. Well, it's decidedly better than the one you got.
Thank you, Jesus.
Do you believe in ghosts? Why or why not?
Ooh. I wouldn't say necessarily ghosts, but I do believe in spirits, and I'll tell you why. So, I mean, obviously, I come from a faith background, as I just basically told about the book I just recently enjoyed. I do believe that whether it be our deceased parents, or our parents, whether they're alive or deceased, or grandparents, or a distant relative who passed away, I do hear every so often like decisions in my head going in my head in their voices. Like I can tell when my dad's voice when he's speaking to me, and in my thoughts. I can tell when my grandfather, my pop when he's speaking to me in my head. My grandpa McCarthy, who unfortunately he passed away when I was 13. I still hear his voice because his voice is very similar to mine and to my dad's. Sometimes I'll hear my Nana. Sometimes I'll hear Grandma McCarthy. Sometimes I'll hear my Uncle Bud, who was a World War II veteran. I'll hear different voices of passed on relatives in my narratives in my head. So not, like I said, not necessarily believe in ghosts, but I do believe in spirits. I do believe that the spirit of your departed lives inside you somehow, and every once in a while, in the different narratives that go on, they speak to you. They speak to you in your head. So that kind of a roundabout way of saying yes, but also a roundabout way of saying no.
Yeah, yeah. And
What
and
about
I
what about you? What about you, Dustin?
I would say in a similar answer to you, I think I do believe in ghosts and I believe in things of that nature. Luckily, to my knowledge, I haven't had a run-in with a ghost or anything, but similar to your answers, I do believe in spirits and certain things of that nature because there are just too many things that have happened to me and in my life that I would consider okay, there's something out there. And I remember, and not to get too sad, but this is the most recent one that I remember, or I shouldn't say the most recent, but it was the most impactful. And honestly, I'll probably end up with a tattoo because of it. But long story short, when my mother was in hospice, she told my sister, "I'm becoming a butterfly." You know, it was one of those things. We didn't know if she was drugged up or whatever, but she was adamant to my sister. She said, "I'm becoming a butterfly." Unbeknownst to us at the time, when somebody passed on at the hospice that she was at, they would put a blue butterfly on their door. So then it just became this and we were like, wow, mom said that before anything happened. It's crazy. So we were my sister and some of my family, we were talking about the blue butterfly and its significance. Now mine is a little different than that, but very recently after she passed away, I was really struggling, and I said to her, I just like spoke aloud one night and I said, "Mom, I need something because your boy is really struggling." And the next day, I went to mow the lawn, and there was a blue dragonfly that flew next to me for, I would say, half the lawn that I mowed, and it was crazy. Like I would go up and turn around, and it would go up and turn around, and I firmly believe that was her calling out to me, being like, "Hey, I'm still here. Things are going to be okay." Whatever she was trying to tell me in that moment. But to me, it is too coincidental that I straight up asked, and then the next day that blue dragonfly, not a blue butterfly, I know. Now, if you talk to my sister, she's had plenty of blue butterfly moments, but for me, I feel like it's that dragonfly for me.
Yeah, I do remember. I do remember you or Tracy saying that you and now I see it whenever I see a dragonfly, I do think about your mom. Same with cardinals, because I remember the day after your sister's wedding, there was a between snow squalls.
Oh yeah.
And Nick was sitting your brother-in-law Nick was setting up a propane heater outside.
Yeah.
I remember taking pictures of them outside. And I remember Tracy saying, "Oh, there's a cardinal. There's a cardinal right there." And whenever I see a cardinal, there's two people I think about when I see a cardinal. I think about my pop-up.
Yeah.
I think about your mother.
Yeah.
Whenever I see a cardinal. So yeah, that's definitely a thing about people's presence being around, in different things, like an insect or an animal or something we see. Like, I'm a Yankee fan because my pop-up was a Yankee fan.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's a big reason why.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's definitely things to remind us of people who've passed on, and those are two things that remind us of people who've passed on.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think generally the question was a little more fun this week from me, so I'm glad about that.
So that's going to actually wrap things up with this episode of No Commercials Required. Again, you can find us on our social medias down here below: Twitter, Instagram, and the scarcely used TikTok. It's at NoCredsREQ. Facebook.com YouTube.com/NoCredsREQ, YouTube.com/@NoCredsREQ. We're on our way to try to get 500 subscribers. So if you're not subscribed, subscribe to the channel. And always, as always, if you're watching on Facebook or on YouTube, smash that like button. Smash it responsibly. On the podcast side, you can listen on a myriad of podcast platforms and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Spreaker, Google Play, iHeart, TuneIn, wherever you podcast. You can also rate and review. 5 stars is always a proper rating. And if you leave us a review, we might even read it on the air. So, for my co-chair, Dustin Henry, my name is Ryan McCarthy. You have been watching or listening to No Credentials Required, where you don't need a press pass to talk sports. We are presented by Belly Up Sports in association with Godzilla Media. In association with Godzilla Media. We want to thank you for watching, or if you're listening. And we'll see you next week. We'll have another summer movie review of No Ticket Required. And we'll do some more lists, and we'll do some more questions for Humans Guys Night edition. So we'll see you next week. Take care.
Good night, everybody.